Okay, so I'm just going to apologise right now for any sort of popping in this particular podcast, because apparently this Blue Nessie does have a pop filter built into it, but I don't think so. And also the ticking in the background is the clock in this room, so I will have to change recording setups for a while. Go Andrew Huang style, the usual, really. Okay, so just after the introduction preface, I'm going to preface the entire thing and say this podcast will be a mixture of this sort of scripted stuff that you're hearing right now and some more conversational style of talking, which is going to be me with my friend Tom. So Tom introduced me to the thing that we're going to be talking about today. There'll be an intro in the more conversational style of piece. So basically all the money I've ever spent on this hobby is entirely his fault, and all future money, because believe me, I will buy more stuff because I have no self-control. So all future amounts of money that I spend on this hobby is also all his fault. You owe me a fuck ton of money, Tom. Give it to me now.
Hi there, I'm Jay, and welcome to the Ingenious Movement, and welcome to the first episode of our podcast. Don't know what it's called yet? We'll let you know down the pipeline. I'm joined today with Tom.
Hello, guys.
Tom is currently a little bit ill, so he doesn't sound at his peak. So
I do apologise, guys, if it's triggering.
We'll see how it goes, basically. Today we are talking about an anime and film series called Evangelion. If you've never heard of it, it involves mechs and aliens and lots of explosions, and it's really cool. But just to be really quick,
there is going to be some big spoilers in this podcast because we're going to talk about how the films conclude and how they roll on to the next films. So if you plan on seeing them, don't listen to the podcast first.
Yeah. Go away, find the films, watch them legally, illegally, I don't care. Then just come back and listen to the podcast, and we will be right back here waiting. Okay, so the entire premise of the Evangelion films is that it's in the distant future, or actually it might even now be the past, because I think it's, usual sort of 90s stuff, in 2015 type thing. But aliens, or we think they're aliens, we have a theory.
Yes.
But these things called angels have destroyed the Earth, basically. It's dystopian future sci-fi stuff.
So supposedly half of the world's population has been destroyed in what they call the second impact. We'll get on to the impacts later.
Do we actually find out what the first impact was?
Yeah, no, it explains it in there's in the anime it explains it, but in the films it doesn't.
I haven't got very far in the anime yet, so.
Quick side note, neither of us have seen the entirety of the original anime, so we have very little experience with that, so please don't try and persecute us for very little knowledge on that and saying, but it's explained in this episode. Yeah, we haven't seen it. I've seen up to about episode 9, but that's about it in all fairness, so sorry about that.
But anyway, so the angels have come down, destroyed the Earth, and there are these things called Avas. Basically, no conventional weapons will actually damage the angels. So there's this, they have Project Nerve, spelled N-E-R-V, there's no E on the end, and they have developed these things called Ava units, and they're giant mechs, piloted by children. Because that's logical. But we don't question, we just accept.
Because basically, what you find out later in the series, and in the films, is that the Avas are actually angels, in a sense, because they're actually sort of biological creatures that are just covered in armour. Sounds a bit weird. But what happens is how they pilot them is they basically connect the brain of the Ava with that of the pilot.
Yeah, and you do have some physical controls, but most of it is to do with your thought process. You have to think about walking to make it walk. There are some controls, but they tend to be, using the weapons and everything.
Yeah. But there's they supposedly haven't done that much research into them, but there's a few units that are sort of main ones. The main sort of protagonist is called Shinji Ikari.
And his dad is the leader of the Nerve Project.
And basically, his Ava is called Unit 1, which is like purple and green, and I think is the best looking one, to be honest.
But we'll get on to that.
We can argue about that later.
Yeah. But yeah, the entire series revolves around trying to stop and avoid the next impacts, because you've had the first and second impact, and we are waiting for the angels to try and bring about the third impact, and the AV units are there to stop them.
Yeah.
And we'll get on to more plot stuff in a bit, but anyway.
It's a very, very confusing plot, but it kind of makes sense, but it's just a bit convoluted and a bit long.
Yeah. Okay, so How did you actually? I know you've told me this story before, but how did you get into Evangelion?
I wasn't looking for it. My dad kind of downloaded a film that he thought looked good, so we just watched it, and I was like, oh my god, this is so good. And then I then watched the second one, and I was like, oh my gosh, where's the third one? So then we started watching like the third one, but then we didn't know there was a fourth one.
Yes, because there is in fact going to be a fourth one coming out. We don't know when. We're thinking possibly 2018, but we don't know yet. And this means that 2018.
Because we're hoping if it does release in 2018, there's a lot of films that we're looking forward to. We've got Ready Player One, which we both read the book, and I'm really hyped to see. And also Mortal Engines, which we've both seen.
We both read like the entire series of Mortal Engines. It is going to be so good, especially since it's being directed by Peter Jackson. If you don't know who Peter Jackson is, A, where have you been? And B, he did Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And yes, there is, you may say, oh, well, The Hobbit's a bit too long and all this sort of stuff, but there wasn't much material there. Oh, believe me, there's a lot of book material.
There's a lot of material for Mortal Engines.
4 books in the original series, and there's the sequel series and the prequels. It's messy,
yeah.
But anyway, tangent. Yeah, back to Evangelion. So we're thinking that might be released this year because the developers, it's not really developers, the studios tweeted out in April of 2017 that production was going well. So we're thinking sometime 2018, it'd probably be very late 2018, like November release or something like that.
Mm.
Ooh, what is your favourite Ava unit?
Oh, it has to be Unit 1. It just looks so badass because it has like a horn on it. And it's got neon green and purple, and it just looks so badass.
And I think the teeth and the berserk do lend itself to the coolness, which actually, Unit 2 in the third film goes kind of berserk, but it's berserk.
she unlocks the sort of crazy woman who we don't even really know who she is.
This is Oscar that does this in the third film. Oscar goes complete... Yeah, she basically makes it go berserk while she's controlling it. It's not explained... The whole berserk thing isn't properly explained at all.
No, but it kind of happens at the end of 2 as well, with this sort of unknown spy lady. She activates the berserk mode.
Yeah.
In Unit 2, which is Oscar's one.
Basically, it's a load of restrictors, as far as we can tell.
Yeah, and she basically makes it go not full angel mode, but it sort of turns more into an angel. And she actually kind of does what the angel's doing as well. Yeah. Which is quite weird.
It's really confusing. But
she basically bites through AT fields. She's that's what happens, I remember now. Yeah. She was helping Rey get through the AT fields by biting them off with these berserk teeth. It was quite weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that does lend to the coolness of Unit 1, but I don't know what it is, but I love Unit 0. Which then, in the third film, becomes Unit 9. It's basically just a remake of Unit 0.
It's very cool looking because it's got like a single eye in the middle and it's almost got sort of little lips above and below it, which make it look really cool.
It's really sort of humanoid and... Yeah. It's just very cool. Don't know what it is. I think it's mostly because Rey pilots it and Rey's like my favourite character. Because her character development is probably the most extreme, isn't it? She goes from an emotionless husk to a human being.
Yeah, it's quite weird.
And then back to an emotionless husk in the third film. Yeah. Because it's not her. It's a clone. It's confusing. Yeah. Just watch them.
But then also the original Rey is a clone. Yeah. So it's all like...
And then this weird sort of romance between Shinji and Rey. Well, Rey is a clone of his mother.
Yeah, so that's always very
cool. You get some, some weird stuff. But yeah. So yeah, Unit 0 is my favourite. Unit 1 is your favourite. What do you think about Unit 2?
I think Unit 2 is quite cool looking, but I think Oscar, because she's so cocky, sort of kind of ruins it. Yeah, it's a very modern looking one. It almost looks like some sort of Power Ranger thing, 'cause it's bright red. Yeah. With like 4 eyes. Sort of viewing holes or whatever.
They're really cool.
But they all look very good, because they're all very humanoid as well, which is quite good. Whereas in something like Pacific Rim, they're kind of quite slow moving in comparison to big mechy things, whereas the ones in Evangelion, they're sort of skinny arms, almost just like a normal person. Yeah. And they can just kind of move really quickly, and they can run and sprint and stuff, so that's really cool.
I think Unit 13 is like my second favourite, which is it's from the third film.
Yeah.
And it's basically Unit 1, but better. It's got 4 eyes, a dual entry plug system, which means you need 2 people to control it. Yeah. And it introduces another character who's the first angel. They gloss over that plot point very nicely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, Unit 13 is my second favourite, because it's the dual entry plug system and the 4 eyes that do it for me. And they've added more orange into the colour scheme, which is really what Unit 1 needed to look cooler, because it had a lot of purple and a bit of green, but now we've got a lot of purple, a bit of green, and a bit of orange. It just spices everything up.
Yeah.
It's like Christmas.
So I've bought 3 Airfix style models and assembled them all, and they now sit atop my wardrobe. I do love them and the process that goes into making them. I, however, do have a few issues with them, as you might expect. I also have certain issues with only 2 of the models, and the reasons for that will become clear relatively soon. So all the boxes for each of these models are quite different, and it's interesting to see how the Unit 0 box is so different to the Units 1 and 2 boxes. I mean, they're all very different, but Unit 1 and 2 do have a joint sort of theme to them. You can recognise that they were made by the same sort of people around the same sort of time. And the text for them is very stylised, and it matches the style of the films and, from what I've seen, the series. Then the box for Unit 1 is... No, sorry, my bad. Then the box for Unit 0 is entirely different, and it's way more basic. The styling is completely different, and it feels a lot earlier than the other two. If that makes any sort of sense, it's a lot more basic and rudimentary and a little less professional. It feels like someone just went into, sort of copyright-free text, fonts, and just selected a couple instead of, going through and making their own, which is what the other two seem to have. Which is why I was so confused that my problem's specific to individual units. It's because they're called units, like Unit 1 and 2 and 0, and it's funny because it's a pun. It's a pun. It's funny. Fuck you. So yeah, I was so confused that my problems specific to the individual units were with the other two. It seems counterintuitive that the two that seem to have the high production value also seem to be the laziest when it came to the actual kit. Things like using grey instead of red plastic for no apparent reason, or making it so that bits have to be painted so they match the original styling of the piece. Unit 2 had a grey Lance of Longinus. The Lance is red. Unit 2 is red. Why aren't they the same? It makes exactly no sense. Why? Unit 0 has a red Lance, and no other real serious amount of red in the kit. There was one plate, and it was mostly taken up by the Lance of Longinus. It makes no sense. It's almost a waste to make the Lance of Longinus red in that kit. Whereas Unit 2 relies on painting all these different parts, like a Lance of Longinus. Unit 2's red. Just use the same plastic, for fuck's sake. The knuckles are supposed to be yellow, like they're yellow on Unit 0, but they're not yellow on... It makes no sense, okay? Unit 2 relies way too much on painting these parts to match, like the actual original unit, and Unit 1 relies on stickers for very simple colour changes that could be achieved extremely easily through different pieces in different colours, because they're having to colour match with one of their own plastics from a different board, where it's very easy. Unit 0 does it a lot. You'll have a grey base piece, and then instead of, using stickers to make the other pieces white, they'll use white plastic. That's what it does, and it makes a lot more sense. Unit 0 is basically perfectly balanced. Everything you need is in the kit. You don't need to go out and buy paint. You don't need to use too many stickers. There are stickers in there, but they're for stuff like the red eyes. There's almost no other red on that model. I don't think there is, in all fairness. I don't think there's any other red in there. Hence why they use stickers. The knuckles need to be yellow, so they're cast as yellow. There are 2 red dots on the knuckles, and they gave you some stickers to make them red. Keep in mind that these are all official Bandai Evangelion merch. It's not like Unit 0 is a really, really well-made, high-production knockoff. The piece that, in all likelihood, is the oldest, with a lack of a strict theming and the poorest tie-in with the others, has the best quality. There's the clue. In all likelihood, once you look at the copyright dates, everything makes much more sense. Unit 2 is from 1996, Unit 1 is from 1997, and Unit 0 is from 2007. It's really weird, though, because the first two were clearly for the anime, and 0 must have been, released for sort of bringing it back with the film, and that makes sense. But why is the production value of the box so different to the production value of the box of the other two? It almost makes no sense. I don't understand it at all. However, it is nice to see that the transfers have remained a steady consistency of bullshit the entire decade that these models have been produced. Seriously, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to individually cut out the transfers, soak the individual ones when you need them in water, so you can then slide them off of the paper that they're attached to, so you can then put them onto the plastic, roll out all the water and let them dry. That's bullshit. Just use stickers like you did for the others. There's this thing called clear. It's a wonderful colour. You've used it for the edge of the transfers, but you know you can use it for stickers as well. That's a thing you can do, you fuckers. Seriously though, these transfers are my only qualm with Unit 0. They even updated the power cable so it had a copper core instead of the useless bullshit plastic thing they gave the other two. Copper, that shit's expensive. But they managed to give it a copper core for no other reason than it's now posable. Like, out of all three of my models, Unit 0 is the most dynamic because I can pose that power cable. It makes it look like it's turning round. One of them, like Unit 2, doesn't have the power cable attached because it just doesn't need it, and it just looks bullshit with it on. Unit 1 is still attached to its base, so it has the power cable attached. That makes sense. But in all likelihood, I wouldn't use it otherwise. Just to mention, I will link like Amazon pages to these models and to the films themselves. Although, quick warning, if you do want to buy any of the units, my advice would be start off with Unit 0. It is the cheapest. If you want Unit 1, I managed to get, well, I found the price recently after Black Friday for about £35 for the entire kit. That was great. If you look now, it's £47. They get very expensive very quickly. And that's literally just because of demand. It's not supply and demand, it's just demand. If you go for one of the popular ones, such as Unit 1, it will cost you. If you go for one of the less popular ones to see what you think about the kits, so for example Unit 0, it's barely in any of them, so it's a safe bet. If you go for Unit 0, that'll cost you a lot less. Unit 2 will cost you a bit more dearly, because that is another cool one. Unit 2 and Unit 1 get like the coolest scenes in the entire films. Thank you for listening to the podcast and for me ramble for ages. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you back to me and Tom just rambling about how amazing the films are and what we think of the anime and art style and everything. So enjoy.
Let's talk about the films, because the films are kind of the main thing that we want to talk about. In the first film, it's almost like a sort of coming of age film. Like, someone was like 13 Reasons Why without the suicide or something.
Which I don't get that because I haven't watched 13 Reasons Why yet because I'm a scrub. So,
but it starts off with Shinji Ikari. He's arranged to meet someone.
You don't know properly who she is yet or anything. You just know of her.
Exactly, but he's kind of just stood in this sort of village that's been a little bit destroyed.
It's kind of abandoned. There's no one around. Nothing at all. And then this angel appears. They call them angels. They don't look like angels, but it's basically a giant, monster alien type thing. Typical anime sort of monster, giant, weird mask, skewed up proportions, ridiculously powerful, destroys the military, the usual.
And it has a giant red orb as its like heart or sort of power source.
Yeah, they call them the core, which you don't find out until a bit later. But then basically what happens is the person he's meeting turns up. She's like way older than him. And, you're sort of typical anime, really, really attractive, busty, the whole 9 yards. But yeah, so she turns up, they get in the car, military are trying to take on this angel, the car gets flipped and stuff, doesn't it? And then they eventually...
Because what happens is, they're trying everything they can, and then what they do is they drop an N2 mine, which is basically a nuclear bomb.
It's the equivalent of a nuke, yeah. Which is what knocks the car over.
And they knock it, and they drop 2 of them, and the military thinks they destroyed it because they haven't activated the nerve to deal with the angel yet.
Yeah, because that's the whole point of nerve, is to deal with the angels if and when they're needed. But the military think they've got it for now. So yeah, they've dropped the N2 mine, and everything seems to be fine.
It's a huge explosion, and just like
big cloud of smoke, the usual sort of thing, and then out of the smoke appears the angel. And basically the reaction in the control room is, well, fuck.
What's just happened? Yeah, so oh gosh. So then they kind of like activate the nerve.
Yeah.
Because they send out Unit 0, don't they?
No, they don't. Unit 0 is still,
it's still
attached to the wall.
Stasis, isn't it?
So they're going to send out, basically. Did we say about Shinji being the son of the leader of Nerve? But even if we did, obviously they send Ikari. His last, I don't remember his first name.
Shinji Ikari. They send him to Nerve because they want him to pilot Unit 1.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like his Ava, almost, in a sense.
Yeah.
And because they design it for one person to pilot.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, you can pilot other people's Avas, but it's...
As we'll talk about.
Yeah. But, yeah, there is a certain degree of sort of leniency, and you can basically pilot whatever. But yes, they're going to get Shinji to pilot it. He straight up refuses, because he hasn't talked to his dad in forever, since his mum died, basically. And suddenly his dad's just brought him here, he's like, oh yeah, I want you to do this thing for me. So he's like, well, no. I thought, connecting as a family again.
It's having kind of contrasting thoughts and stuff, isn't it? And he gets a bit... He's like, what, you only hit me up because you want me to pilot this thing. But he's not thinking of the implications of what happens if he doesn't pilot it.
Yeah, and then you have this girl, Rei Ayanami, turn up. She's wrapped in bandages. She's basically half dead at this stage.
And she like rolls past him on a stretcher with two kind of hospital people just dragging her along, and he sees her and he's like, he freaks out. He's like, I can't let her pilot this.
And then there's an explosion somewhere outside the facility, which makes her fall off the gurney, and she can barely stand. So he's like
freaking out.
This is the moment where he knows, okay, I've actually got to do something. So he agrees to pilot the Ava, and he doesn't actually do anything, does he?
No. So what happens is they teach him how to shoot a little bit, while this angel's slowly walking towards their base, kind of thing.
They sort of tell him exactly what he should do. Think about walking. He falls over and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and then because they send him out, and he stumbles a bit, and he starts shooting it. Like, so he does what he's told, but then doesn't really do anything.
And then basically the angel starts wailing on the Ava, completely demolishing it, until what happens is
he goes berserk.
The unit goes berserk. This never gets used ever again, basically, as a plot point. It's used kind of a little bit in the third film, but not really. But yeah, so the unit goes completely nuts, becomes this weird beast thing with lots of teeth and glowing
basically
eyes.
Turns into another angel, and it basically just rips this angel apart.
Yeah.
And because what happens is, it's targeting the core, obviously.
Yeah.
But when they smash the core, for some reason they all explode in blood. So
basically,
there's huge seas of blood floating into the air. It's really weird.
We don't know why, other than because anime, but even still, there is way too much blood to be contained within that creature's body.
Yes, it doesn't make much sense, but hey ho.
Yeah. The rest of the film basically is sort of him becoming an actual proper mature pilot and competent in everything. And it's really just a case of him learning to become who he wants to be. And there's still a little bit of the original Shinji in there, so there's still room to improve. Then in the second film...
Yes, I like the second one. I think it was the second one.
My favourite is the second one. We can all agree on that. Because basically Shinji's no longer, a bit of a coward and a wimp. So he's actually facing up to his responsibility. He's a much... Oh, yeah, we were right. 2015 is when it's set. Okay. Alright, yeah. So he's become a much more developed and complex character. But there's still room to improve. And what happens? Really, I think it is just more taking out angels for most of the film, isn't it?
Yeah, and it also introduces more characters as well, because we have there's another Ava that gets introduced, Unit 2.
Yeah, you have
like a red one.
Unit 2 gets introduced in the first film, isn't it? Anyway, but yeah, you have the pilot called Oscar, which that is not how you pronounce her name. It is spelled Asuka. You don't pronounce that Oscar. Asuka, maybe. But not Oscar.
Yeah.
Obviously, the correct Japanese way to say it would be Asuka. And you kind of leave out some of the proper sounds and whatnot, but you don't pronounce that Oscar in a million years.
Yeah.
Anyway, rant over. And she's sort of boneheaded, stubborn, really kind of hyper-aggressive. Basically, she's everything you'd expect a hyper-masculine character to be. She's basically what you'd expect Shinji to be, as a male anime character, and Shinji is what you'd expect her to be. So it's quite good breaking stereotypes there, isn't it?
In the first one, so what happens is sort of an angel comes, and it's a really weird one because it doesn't look like anything. It's basically a big sort of diamond.
Oh, that one, God, yes.
Yeah, the core right in the middle of it. And so he tries to fight it, obviously, but it absolutely destroys him. It shoots a laser at him, and he gets put into a coma. He wakes up from this coma, and then Rei tells him that she's going to go and do it himself. But then he's like, no, you can't do that, you'll die.
But he's refusing to get back in the Ava because he was wrecked so hard.
Yeah,
and she's
exactly.
like, well, I'll have to go in your place. That's what they're telling me to do. So he's like, fine, whatever, I'll do it.
But then what Misato, which is the girl that we were talking about at the start of the film, who's like his guardian, Shinji's guardian.
Because she adopts him and all that.
Yeah, and she's kind of like the leader of NERV, or sort of like the manager.
She does the everyday managerial stuff.
But what they find out is that it kind of changes states at a certain rate.
Yeah.
And then they work out that if they shoot something,
basically they get
in the same rate,
the equivalent of a rail gun, isn't it? Basically?
Yes, basically. But what they do is they basically take all of the energy from everywhere in the world, basically, and
they just basically tap into the national grid of Japan and use it to power this one gun. It takes 5 minutes to charge up a shot from the entire electricity network in Japan.
And it's quite a cool scene because it's loads of trains and cars and lorries, but they're just bringing in hundreds and hundreds of bits of electrical
transport, capacitors, and it's a really cool scene. I mean, that is one of the big pluses of the films, is the graphics are amazing.
The graphics are good because it's quite an old film as well, actually, 2007.
Yeah, 2007.
But it's quite a nice anime style because it's sort of 3D, but not sort of.
It's sort of
3D modelling rendering.
Yeah, the way they've done the shading makes it look very 3D, but it is still technically 2D sprites.
Yes, exactly. Which makes because it makes for the action scenes are they're very clean and very smooth with that sort of
and then loads of really big sweeping panning shots to capture all the action and everything. Anyway, you get lots of big sweeping shots of this big gun and all these capacitors, and if they take one shot and they miss, so they have to wait for 5 minutes for this shot to charge up again, whilst this angel knows that they're there and is trying to dig straight into NERV.
Yeah, and basically what it does is it shoots a ginormous beam through a mountain at them. But because Unit 1 is sat down controlling this gun, and the gun's plugged into it as well,
so he
can't move.
And then you have Unit 0, which is Rei's unit. And she is basically just there to defend him more than anything, isn't she?
Yeah. And it's quite cool because she has this shield, and it was almost bonding. She's like, I will protect you.
Yeah.
And then he's lining this shot up while she's being shot by this huge laser thing. And then they actually hit it, and it was quite cool, but it actually breaks into their underground base.
Yeah, and the reason it's going for the underground base is because they have this thing called Lilith underneath the base.
And basically, Lilith is what caused the impacts, pretty much.
Basically, yeah. She is the big bad.
Yeah. Basically, it's not so Lilith isn't an angel per se, almost, because she's not alive. She doesn't do anything. But it's this sort of being that they have underground, miles underground. And what happens is if one of the angels gets to it, it causes the impact.
Yeah, basically the entire premise of the first film is stopping them from getting to Lilith.
Yeah.
In the second film, it's still stopping them from getting to Lilith, but in other ways.
Yeah, because actually, Misato takes Shinji down to see Lilith.
Yeah.
And then explains to him what happened and how the impacts happened.
Yes, second film, you have the introduction of Oscar, don't you?
Yes. Exactly.
It's either in the first film and she really comes into her own in the second. So we do actually have the Wikipedia page open at the moment, so we'll know. You've got Ritsuko... Asuka?
No, she's not.
Okay, so no. As far as we are aware, Asuka Oscar, whatever, however you pronounce her name, isn't in the first film. She is introduced in the second film.
She gets introduced in the second film as quite a sort of a cocky pilot, and she's like, I don't need anyone else, I'm my own team almost.
Yeah.
Whereas, because obviously the Angels are starting out to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it's typical sort of shonen anime type thing. The power levels have to increase as time goes on, otherwise it's just the same old stuff.
Yeah, it's actually very cool, because what happens is, in the second one, Oscar, Rei and Shinji all have to work together, because there's this one that comes down, and it's almost like a butterfly or something.
Yeah, it's like this big insectile type thing, and basically Shinji has to pry open what they have is ET fields. It's basically a force field.
Yeah, because he has to like catch this thing in his hands, but then the sort of angel comes out of this flying thing. It's really hard to explain, but it's got like
basically
wings.
He catches it. Between him and Rei, they pry open the ET field, so that Oscar can then take a shot and kill the Ava.
And she's trying to use a knife to break this core, but it's whizzing around. And what Rei does is she dives in there and grabs it and holds it, and it's like burning away the Ava's hands and stuff.
And which is the interesting bit, because the pilots are in this fluid called LCL, which basically allows you to breathe and everything. We don't know the full implications of what it does. Basically, it's sort of, because you're linked via your brain, what happens is you end up, if the Ava is damaged, you feel the pain. So it's not as such like actual physical damage to you, but you feel the pain through the LCL, and it will burn you basically. So she catches this thing and it's trying to melt away the Ava's hands, so it's burning her hands while Oscar actually takes down the angel, and she almost kills Shinji in the process. So Misato flips her lid completely, and she's like, oh, but I got the job done, didn't I? And that sort of attitude is very prevalent in the first half of the film, but as time goes on and they all bond together, they sort of learn they can work together as a team. Shinji becomes less afraid, Oscar becomes less headstrong, and then, the climax of the film.
Yes, the ending.
Oh so my gosh.
Basically, I would say, I like this way of saying it. Basically, what you're saying, Shinji turns into an angel, or into a god.
Yeah, we should probably back up a bit and explain exactly what happens.
Yes.
Shinji has left NERV for reasons which I can no longer remember. He left NERV, probably daddy issues, as per usual.
Yeah.
And then, you have the introduction of whatever the other character is called, whatever, lunatic with glasses.
Yes, so basically it's this sort of like rogue agent. We don't even know what she's working for, because she might be working for sort of the higher powers like Sele or something.
Yeah.
But she sabotages one Ava, kills one Ava in the start of...
Yeah.
That's how the second film opens.
We didn't cover it because it had no bearing on the rest of the plot, so we bring it back in now. And so she sabotages this Ava to kill an angel.
Yeah, because they're taking apart this angel, and it doesn't actually do anything. Like, they've ripped all its sort of flesh off, and it's just bones, but it doesn't do anything really.
Yeah. But, so you have her introduced, and Shinji, like I said, has left and is hiding in the bunkers below the city, because the entire city is on lifters and stuff and drops below the level, so they can form actual decent attacks against the angels.
Yeah, and basically the bit that's underneath the sort of roller, the city on sort of rollers or whatever, it's called the Geofront, and that's where sort of NERV is based, and it's like this paradise underground.
Yeah.
That's got lush greenery and stuff, unlike actual Japan up top.
Yeah, and then
basically this angel, I can't remember what number angel it is, but it sort of comes down
and wrecks everyone's shit, basically.
Yeah, and it actually starts fighting, and they start fighting in the Geofront, which is quite scary, because what happens is Unit 1 gets his arm cut off by this.
Yeah, we need to back up a bit. Basically, Unit 2 is now piloted by crazy pink woman with glasses, whatever her name is. She breaks into the bunker, pulls Shinji out, basically tells him, get your act together, you need to do something.
Yeah.
So that happens. He gets into Unit 1, starts fighting it, its arm gets cut off, like you said.
Yeah.
And then he basically has his entire shit wrecked. Rei has been killed at this stage, or assimilated, hasn't she? Unit 0 and Rei have been assimilated by this angel.
Yeah, no, because what she does is she basically picks up a fucking nuke, an M2 mine, and runs at this fucking thing with it.
Oh, she does, doesn't she? Yeah.
Yeah, she runs at it and tries to like basically blow it up on it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work because the AT field is just too strong, and she's trying to push it through it. And in the end, she actually does get it through the AT field. But what the angel does is it covers its core. So it blows up and it melts some of the angel, but it doesn't actually reach its core.
And then it kills...
And then it basically just rips Unit 0 in half.
Completely destroys Ray.
Ray is dead. Ray is definitely dead.
Ray is definitely dead. And then what happens is Shinji's been fighting, he's lost... The Ava unit's lost its arm.
Yeah, so he gets his arm cut off and the Ava's just like laying there or some shit on the floor.
And then he decides, I'm not taking this, you just killed Ray, that's not on.
He's like, Ray! It's quite a cool way because it's called Spike Spencer is the guy that voices him. That's the English voice one. Obviously there's Japanese voice actors as well, but we're talking about the dubbed versions
because that's the only ones we could come across.
And basically he goes full angel mode on it.
Basically what happens is the Ava unit ascends to become an angel.
Yeah, and basically the arm comes back, but it's not there. It's almost like
it's an ethereal glowing arm.
Yeah, and it looks like it's so cool. And basically, he just kind of flies at this angel and just
destroys it, and then sort of reaches in to grab Ray, and that's basically when the film ends.
Because he goes further and further into the sort of neural link between him and the angel, and it just keeps going deeper and deeper.
Was it 80% is about the limit they give you, isn't it?
Yeah, and then he just keeps going.
Is where they sit you at. That is where you're supposed to be. With and that synchronization with the angel. He goes up to about 143, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's actually so ridiculous, but it's such a good scene.
It gets to the point where they can't measure it anymore.
And then that is how the third impact starts.
Yes.
He's the one that starts the third impact.
And then we get on to the third film, which is... I've rewatched it this morning.
I don't know much about the third film myself. So.
I watched it once, and I did the same thing as I did with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. My expectations were so high, there was no way the film could have met them. So I thought the third film was really bad. I then rewatched it this morning, just to be sure, before I did this podcast, just to be sure that I was right. But no, it's not as bad. There are still some serious problems that I have with it. My main one being that everyone's against Shinji. Everyone hates him now because he brought about the third impact. Even, Misato is against him. Despite the fact that right before he ascended, she shouted at him, do what you think is right.
Yeah.
Don't do it for anyone else, do it for you. Yeah. Basically telling you, do whatever the hell you want. It doesn't matter about the rest of us. And now she's pissed at him for doing what he wanted.
Yeah.
It is the most annoying thing ever. Everyone hates him, despite the fact they were all egging him on. It's like,
yeah, it's quite weird.
I mean, and 14 years have passed, so they've been nursing this grudge that they caused for 14 years. So it is quite a big character shift, and that is the main problem with the third film, I'd say.
And also because it's a different art style as well, so the characters look different, which is odd.
Yeah, it's sort of more like, it's not completely like the anime, but it's more like the anime than it is like the film.
So like the film, actually, the first film specifically, is very, very near to the anime in what happens. It's just the graphics are updated, and so it just kind of looks a bit more modern, so it looks nicer. Yeah. And then the third film kind of goes back a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's
how it looks.
It was really confusing. But, yeah, the third film is still very good. It's not as good as the second one. The second one still is my favourite.
I would say the second one's definitely the best.
I think it's not as cool. The second film is a lot cooler than the third film, but the third film sets up a lot of plot points and raises a lot of questions, which when they bring out the fourth film will almost certainly be answered, and that will make the third film a lot better.
Yeah, I think so too.
But the problem is you can't rely on the sequel to your film to make your film good. That's
very true.
You can't set up a load of questions and bring up a load of story and then answer all these questions and then say, hey, look, it's a very complicated plot. It's like, no, you have to have some substance to your film.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure what else we can say, because I think that about wraps up all the film's main points, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me, Tom.
That's alright, not a problem.
Yeah, you might see Tom again, or, hear Tom again in some of these podcasts if there's something else that we want to, talk and gush about. Mortal Engines, that'll probably be one.
That will definitely be one. I will be happy to talk about that. Let's not digress.
Let's not digress too much. Thank you guys ever so much for watching. Thank you, Tom, for being here.
No problem.
And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye!
Just as a final thought to mention, I know I did say I'd leave some links to models in the description, and I have. I've left you links to the the Unit 0 and the Unit 2 that I bought, but the Unit 1 model isn't the one I bought because I found a better one, so that's the one in the description, just so you know. I don't know what it's like because I don't have the kit, but it looks a lot better. It's one of the newer ones, so there you go.